Oh, good day. Welcome back. We're going to be looking at the beginning of Unit 9 today. Just a brief introduction, a brief little walkthrough here for Section 9.1, Strings and Input in the Strings and While Loops unit. So let's dig into Section 9.1.1, Input. As we've seen before, we have had mouse control, keyboard control, with the CS Academy coding. The next stage here is if we want to get sort of lengthier input, right? So for instance, we'll launch this box here. You'll see that this code, thank you, email, you'll see that this code launches a pop-up that says enter a message. So we can enter in a message here. And if we click OK, boom, you can see that that code then prints that, retrieves that from the dialog box and can then print it on screen. So looking at the code, just a brief 4 lines here. We have a couple of labels. As you can see in the app box here, there is a new command here, as you can see, app.getTextInput. So getTextInput is the thing that's going to open up that dialog box, print a message in that dialog box, as we saw, and then this would be storing it in an app variable. Once we have that stored, that is the result of what someone's typed in the dialog box. You can see this is how we print it back out by creating a label with that same variable. So we typed in hello world, and then boom, this label on line 6 prints it back to our main screen. Okay, so that's the app.getTextInput function. Okay, some other things we can do. Int, this is going to be a function that converts things. We can use that to convert something to an integer, because if we want to do math with the result of something that comes out of a dialog box, as you can see here, the thing that comes out of these get text input dialog boxes is a string. And a string, if you try, if someone types in 2 and in another dialog box we type in 4, 2 plus 4 like that is not going to get us 6, okay? It's going to get us 2, 4, right? So if we want to actually do the math, we need to convert things to numbers first, and then we can do that with that int function, as you can see here. So the use of that, if we hit play and look at this example, enter the new radius of the circle. Maybe someone wants to make a circle that has a radius of 66, and so we click OK. Boom, and you can see that got bigger, right? The initial radius here is 50. We get the new one with the getTextInput command, and then before we change that property of the dot variable of the circle, in order to change the property, we can't just put app.r there. If we did, without that in function, we try to run this, 66, boom, oh, an error occurred. Okay, exception, type error, circle radius shouldn't be a number, but 66 is of type string, because getTextInput returns a string, not an integer. We need that int function. Boom. Okay, and that's the basics. I'll let you go through and do the checkpoints, but we can go through and do an exercise together. First thing, though, before we get to one of those exercises, though, would be to look at section 9.1.2, having to do with looping and indexing with strings. Once we have a message retrieved from a dialog box, or even just a string not from a dialog box, there are ways of looking at pieces of that message, pieces of that string. Okay, so just as we used for loops before, there's a way of using a for loop to loop over the individual characters in a string. So if we say that our string here is some string, those letters in that space, this variable c, in turn, it's going to get the s. So c is going to store s, then it's going to store o the next time around, then it's going to store m, then it's going to store e, then it's going to store the space, and so on. And since there's a total of 10 characters in this string, this for loop will repeat with c having each of those 10 different characters, so it'll repeat 10 times. Okay. So an example of using that here, again, a dialog box, enter a letter, okay, the letter E. And if we type in E here, you'll see that it looks at this string Mississippi We'll see this in the code in a second, but it looks at the word Mississippi and says, well, how many E's are in there? 0, right? So if I do this again and we type in S, you'll see that it now comes with 4, okay? So we're going to have a loop, and you can see the loop part here, for C in text.value. Well, text is this label. And of course, value, the property of a label where the message is stored, is called value, right? So text.value is Mississippi. So this loop with C is going to get M, C is going to get I, C is going to get S, C is going to get S. In turn, C is going to grab each of those letters, each of those characters in the string. And if C happens to be app.letter, which is what the dialog box asked us to type in, so if we typed in the letter S, it says, well, is the first letter an S? No. Okay. Is the next letter an S? No. Is the next letter an S? So if, when we get to this next letter, we say, well, is the current letter, which is S, equal to the letter that someone typed in, S, those are the same, then we have found an S inside the string and increased the counter. So it goes through each letter one at a time, and of course by the end of it, it finds 4 S's. So that's why this printed out, in this case, 4. Okay. Okay. Of course, with any of this, if you have questions, please, email me or come to office hours, and we can discuss further. Okay. There's a lot of uses to these text functions. Then, as we go through, you'll see different things we can do with them. Okay. Okay. With string indexing, this is kind of numerically how we keep track of when we're looping over one of these strings. How do we refer to specific elements, specific letters or characters in that string? Okay, keeping in mind, a string isn't necessarily letters. So a string can be made up of letters, numbers, symbols, all of those things, spaces. So string indexing works this way. We type in the name of the string, a pair of square brackets, and then a number. Now, this may seem weird, but the first number, the first index of a string, same thing with arrays, is 0. So when we look at the string, the word amazing here, if this is stored in a variable called S, then S0 is A. S1 is then M, and so on. If we wanted to look at this character here, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So S5 is N, and S6 is G. Okay. What you'll notice is that if this is a string of 7 characters, if the first one is 0, then the last one is 6. 0 through 6, that's 7 different numbers, 7 different characters. Okay, but it always starts at S0, and then the length -1 for the last character. Okay. So a way to loop through this then would be to say, for I in range len s. Len is a function, a method, which refers to how long a particular string is. So if s is the word note, then len s is 4. Okay, so we're saying make a loop for I in range 4. That means we're going from 0 to 3. I would have the values 0, 1, 2, 3. If the string S was the word access, access has 6 letters in it, so if we say for I in range 6, we'd be counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? Okay, I'm going to end this video here, but what I'll do is we'll have a follow-up video as a walkthrough for one of the exercises. Okay? Oh, sorry, there's one last thing. Forgot. Like Steve Jobs here. One more thing. Using in. Okay? There's an in operator. And remember, operators are things like plus, minus, multiply, divide, but there's other things that can work as operators as well. And in is an interesting thing. So if we have 2 strings, and we have a string AC, and we have another string ABC, and we say, well, is AC in ABC? Well, yes, the individual characters A and C are both in here, but AC next to each other is not in ABC. So in that case, this operator would tell us false. If we say, is AB in ABC? Well, yes, both the letters A and B are in here, but they're also right next to each other. So you can, what we're doing is we're saying, can we find this string that we're looking for, AB, in ABC, in that order, in that spacing? And yep, boom, it's in there. Okay. Typically, what we would do is we'd have two variables, two strings, and say, well, is this one string variable inside the other string variable? Is S in T? Well, if S is AB and T is ABC, then true. It will return true. Okay. Looking at a use for this here, enter a word. Well, how about is? Well, what this is doing, if we go through and look at the code, is okay, a little in depth, right? But we had a text input that came up, right? That's our target word, as you can see here, and then we got an alphabet, and so this is an app variable, but inside of it we're storing the contents of the entire alphabet in order. Okay. Our target word we said was is. Well, in that case, we are, as it says, we see here, there's a for loop, and in that for loop, we're looping through the entirety of the alphabet. So I is going from 0 to 25. So when we say alphabet 0, that's grabbing the A. When we go the next time through the loop and I is 1, then alphabet 1 is B, and alphabet 2 is C, and so on. So it's individually taking out those individual letters from the alphabet and storing them in a variable called letter. Well, the point of that is then we're using that in operator and saying, is the letter inside of our target word? When we get to the letter I, eventually, as we're looping through the alphabet, we're saying, is I inside of, we typed in the word is I in is? If it is, we turn the color of that letter to green. And if it's not, we turn the color of that letter to red. So that's why when we ran this, I came up in green, S came up in green. Okay, and as you can see here, what it's doing is making a label each time through this loop. It's making a label with just the individual letters. So it makes a label with A, turns it red. Makes a label with B, turns it red, and so on. If we typed in a longer word, typed in the word alphabet, for instance, right? When it gets to the A, boom, it becomes green because the keyword, the target word that we typed in was alphabet. A is in the word alphabet, but we're looking to see, is A inside of the letters A through Z? Yes. Is B, when we get to B, is B inside of, boom, that word alphabet? And yes, it is. Is C inside of the word alphabet? No, it's not. So C is red, and so on. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please email me. I would go back through and reread the notes, go through, certainly do the checkpoints before you try to go to any of the exercises or look at the exercise video. Thank you.